iPhones keep getting better, but the biggest problem with iPhone photography has always been images looking overly digital and too sharp. But today, we're fixing that problem using this. Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. You know what it means when I do the hand rub at the beginning of the video. I'm excited about this one. I have solved the biggest problem with iPhone photos. This right here is a ProMist filter. This is basically the only filter I use on my camera. It is hands down my favorite one. Now what a ProMist filter does is it creates some diffusion and a halation type effect to your photos. It really gives your photos this dreamy type look. And these filters come in a variety of different strengths. They come in a fourth, a half, a one-stop. This right here is a one-stop filter. And you see, after I made my previous iPhone 14 videos, I got to thinking, there's got to be a solution to this over-sharpened digital issue that I've constantly talked about in iPhone photography. It is the main problem with these cameras. And then one day it just hit me. What if I take the filter that I love using on my normal cameras to soften up my images and just put it in front of my iPhone 14 camera like that? This has got to work, right? Well, I went out and tested it, and it worked splendid. I am blown away by this test. Now, there are some issues to this idea, which I will get into, but first I want to focus on the positives and why this is something that I think anyone can do with their iPhone. Now, here's the thing. Moment makes a adapter mount for something like this. They have a filter called the Cinebloom Filter, which essentially does the same thing as a ProMist. You have to pay money to buy the case, to buy the mount, to buy the filter. You can save yourself a little bit of money by just buying the filter and holding it in front of your lens. It essentially does the same thing. You are going to deal with fingerprint marks and things like that, so you do have to look out for that if you choose to go with the cheaper DIY method of doing this. So what I decided to do is use this solution to my problem at a time of day when I thought it would be most effective. So I went out at golden hour when the sun was extremely harsh and it was going through trees. It just blows me away. I can't believe the final photo was made with an iPhone. So this is the photo without the ProMist filter. As you can see, down in the leaves, down in the trees, it just looks over digital. It looks overly sharpened. It looks like something that was made by a computer, which is essentially what the iPhone 14 Pro and all iPhones that use computational photography are. But when you apply the ProMist filter over the lens, you get this as your result. You get a nice soft image, but it's still sharp. This essentially feels natural, whereas if you use a one-stop ProMist on any other camera, at times it can be a little bit too much of an effect. And we see this over and over again as I went through this park making various photos. Here we have the highlights nice and soft, looking great, and then when we have the photo without the filter, the highlights are just harsh and blown out, and once again very digital looking. And that's really the main takeaway from this test. By applying something like a ProMist filter over your iPhone camera, you can get a result that is so much more similar to something you'd get from your traditional camera. I'm really surprised by this. I'm not gonna lie. I went into this video not really knowing what to expect, but I think I'm going to end up buying one of those Moment cases and Cinebloom mounts so I can have this on my iPhone at all times. With all that being said, me raving about this, there are some issues. Like everything, it's not perfect using this solution to get better photos with your iPhone. I'm going to talk about that after I thank the sponsor on today's video, Squarespace. So many photographers put all their time, energy, effort, and even money into creating their pictures, but few of these photographers ever figure out a way to monetize their craft. That is where Squarespace comes into play. No one makes it easier than Squarespace to build a website centered around your photography. If you don't believe me, check out the multiple videos I have listed in the description on this one where I break down how to build a variety of different Squarespace sites. Squarespace is so easy to use because of their drag and drop templates as well as their easy user interface that allows people with no web design experience to create an online store or a portfolio to start adding value to people's lives as an artist. One way you can do this is sell prints, events, you can sell presets, digital products, you can book coaching calls with Squarespace. The opportunities are endless. And maybe you're someone who doesn't plan on selling anything. Squarespace is a great way to showcase your portfolio and book clients. So head over to squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and use code EvanRamp to save 10% when it's time to sign up. That's squarespace.com/EvanRamp to start a free trial and use code EvanRamp to save 10% at sign up. Now, one of the best applications for a ProMist filter when you're using it on a traditional camera and a traditional lens is night photography. You get this really cool atmospheric look effect on neon signs, on street lights. It looks like this cool glow, almost like there's fog in the air. Now, when you apply that same concept to night photos with the iPhone, it doesn't work. Essentially, if I had to guess, I'm not an expert on all the software and everything that goes on in these phones. I think the iPhone, the software in it is optimized to process night images a certain way. And when you add the filter on there, the spread out exposure that you get in the highlights seems to be too much for the sensor. And you get this overly grainy, not very good looking image. Now, there could be some ways to work around this, but it is difficult to have this held up in front of your lens, hit your exposure, and then bring your exposure down. I found that it made this whole concept a little bit too inconvenient. But once again, maybe if you had that moment case and you actually had the filter mounted to your iPhone, it'd be a little bit easier to control all that. Now, the thing is, that only applies to real dark night images. I'm talking about it's completely black outside and you're making a photo of standalone highlights like street lights or neon signs. If you're making photos, say, at sunrise, where there's a more balanced exposure, but you still have these neon lights, you still have these isolated highlights, this filter method works really good. You get awesome glowy looking images like this one, which mimics the effect that you would get on any other camera. Now, there is one issue with doing this. When you hold the filter up to your lens manually, when you take the DIY route in doing this, you have to deal with some of these artifacts that happen. Basically, what I mean by artifacting is when you make a night photo with the iPhone and one highlight is in a certain part of the image, and then a halo or kind of like a smear glow effect happens in another part of the image. That is really apparent when you are holding this filter up to your lens. Like on this image, I'm going to have to do quite a bit of retouching and go in and remove all these different artifacts that have shown up in the image. And you see it on this photo as well, down in the bottom by the car. Because I was holding this up manually and iPhones already have an issue with this, it was just intensified, I guess is the word that I would use. And it's going to require some retouching or some finessing on your part, moving the filter around. Once again, if you're doing this by hand. So all in all, I would rate this test a 10 out of 10. I'm blown away by the results. I'm really surprised by how well this worked. If you have any type of diffusing filter, I highly recommend you try this out and test it for yourself and let me know how the results are. And also let me know if there's any other iPhone experiments or any other filters that you want me to mess around with. I'm thinking about doing a video or at least a YouTube short where I take out a star filter and see what that can do. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Y'all are the truth. I'll see you next time. And for anyone who's interested in how I make money with my photography, you can check out moderncreativemoney.com. I have a 3-hour course there as well as 9 workbook pages you can print out that explain my entire process.